Hello, I'm Pastor Steve Dale, the pastor of New Hope United Methodist Church located in North Adams and serving the Northern Berkshires. New Hope is a reconciling church deeply rooted in community engagement and service, seeking to create a space for all of us to journey together with authenticity rooted in God's agape love. You can find us at our website at new-hopeumc.org, and we worship live on Facebook and YouTube every Sunday at 10 a.m. This is the first reading. This Sunday's scripture reading from the Gospels is actually retold in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 17, verses 1 through 8, and the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verses 28 through 36. And there's also a retelling of it in 2 Peter, chapter 1, verses 16 through 18. But today we're going to read the version that is presented in the lectionary from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9, verses 2 through 8. And we'll be reading from the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up to a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. May God add a blessing to the reading, hearing, and understanding of Scripture. So, as I've said before, this story appears in a few different places in the New Testament, notably the 3 synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And it's told slightly differently in each one of them. But there was something that struck me about this particular reading, and I looked in different versions other than the New Revised Standard Version, and they had slightly different understandings. For example, in the or at least a different way of expressing. In the New International Version, Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah." And then there's a parenthetical statement. He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. In the Message, Eugene Peterson's paraphrase of the Bible in contemporary language, it says, Peter interrupted, "Rabbi, this is a great moment. Let's build 3 memorials, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah." He blurted this out without thinking, stunned as they all were by what they were seeing. In the Common English Bible, it says Peter reacted to all of this by saying to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good that we're here. Let's make 3 shrines, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah." He said this because he didn't know how to respond, for all 3 of them were terrified. So probably what I read into the Mark text wasn't authentically what it was attempting to express. But nevertheless, this is what I got out of this. I read through this and I thought, then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." This is Peter addressing Jesus. And commonly in writing, when you address someone, the next phrase is a response, right? So then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." And so the next sentence, the next verse, which I initially read as a response to Peter, said, "He did not know what to say, for they were terrified." So when I first read this, I was struck by the idea that Jesus didn't know what to say to Peter, because he recognized how terrified they were. And I thought, wow, what a moment there to recognize that Jesus wasn't certain what to say, how to speak into the terror, the fear, the awe of the people that he brought up to the mountaintop with him. And if that were true, if even Jesus has moments where he just isn't sure better is that for us? Knowing that we're not perfect and will never be perfect, what a phenomenal example for us to understand that the condition of humanity, the imperfect condition of humanity, isn't something that we alone experience, but it's just something that's part of the natural state of humanity, so natural that even Jesus experienced it. And I'm not convinced that that isn't a valid reading of this. I mean, we do see other moments when Jesus' humanity leads him to do things that we find, hard to swallow. I mean, he creates a whip and he chases the people out of the temple with a whip. At one point, he curses a fig tree because it's not bearing fruit when fruit isn't in season, so there was no reason it should have borne fruit in the first place. We do see Jesus do things that make us question why he would do them, and maybe part of that answer is that Jesus is showing us that there's nothing to be ashamed of in our humanity, even when our humanity sometimes leads us to do things other than what we would do and that we think Jesus would have us do. Now, again, the other translations that I read maybe make that initial reading I got from the New Revised Standard Version not strictly true. Like they indicate in the other translations that it was clearly Peter who wasn't certain what to say. But as Methodists, we believe that the human beings who wrote Scripture were inspired by God. And we also, as Methodists, believe that we can be inspired by God when we read Scripture. And so sometimes the Spirit moves us to pull a message out of Scripture that wasn't necessarily the intent of the original authors. And that's what I got from this today. The message that the Spirit, I think, pulled out of me when I read this Scripture was that our humanity is maybe something we need to work to better, but it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's part of who we are, and it's part of who we were created to be. And so we can embrace that. We can try to do better maybe today than we did yesterday, but we can move forward with the knowledge that we are what we are created to be. And that is human, fully human, all the way through, in our good moments and our bad moments, and always loved by God and redeemed by Christ.